Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Hobgoblin, Brutal Fantasy Battles by Mike Hutchinson and Electi Studios. This is Mike's quick to play, quick to set up, quick to design, miniatures agnostic, old school rank and flank combat game, which is basically usable with any miniature collection you have of base miniatures to throw down in his dungeon world, Rotvarlden, which is a vertically down kind of Elden Ringy multiple biome, like dark fantasy setting that he's set up. It's very cool, and there's tons of history and background. There's even like a little novella printed in here with illustrations by Crom. Wonderful illustrations by Crom, telling some of the stories of what's been going on here. So if you're a fan of like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, that kind of vibe of fantasy, that's what this is going for. In that rank and flank, Doom and Darkness, underground, lightless realm, multiple biome sort of setting. Wonderful and beautiful photography and miniature painting by lots of our sort of like common friends. Greg Horton from Electi, Sean Sutter, who else did some in this? Casey Holt and Sean did the miniature painting. Miniatures photography by Sean, Matt Coyle, and Greg Horton. And then illustrations by Crom, Sean, The Forge Studios, and Domenico Cava. So beautiful, like just a sumptuous feast for the eyes the book is, but we'd expect no less from Electi and Greg when this was all put together at the end. So this is, and you can see here, this is Rotvarlden. So this is the Sun's Gone Out universe, where Eldhall is basically at the bottom here, and the up and down Eld and Ist is one of the new quadrants, basically. So you have north, south, east, and west, but now you have Ist and Eld, which is the directions you can also go to try and to determine where you are inside this universe. So beautiful map design. I can't remember who did the map, by the Forge Studios. Very much like old school fantasy, kind of Tolkien-esque style map. And for a miniatures agnostic game, I gotta say, Mike really pulled out all the stops. Rotvarlden is his like RPG setting though, that he's kind of designing and like leaning into. So I love that he's already made a miniature war game in that setting, and you get a ton of info on it. So if you're interested in kind of diving into this, this book is great just for that. All right, let's talk about the various biomes. You can see them all illustrated here, like Natsvamp, the slime forest, or Eldvarden, the infernal realms. This is the hell down at the bottom. And then core rules. Okay, so basically this is take your miniature collection, assign them either, like movement trays or bases to get them all squared out, and then pick and build your own stat lines for your miniature collection. So if you haven't played a miniature agnostic game before, this game isn't going to give you army lists. You're going to design your own army lists based upon what you have in your miniature collection, and everyone's gonna have access to the same kind of stuff. It's a D6 based game, measured in inches. Dice can be rolled multiple times. 6s are always a hit, 1s are always a miss. You can measure distances line of sight at any time. Units are always in range line of sight of themselves, and if text is more specific, then the text replaces these general rules. First player is the person with the initiative token. D3s are half a D6. D6s, you roll 1 as a 10, 1 as a numerator. And then there's various tokens and markers. Engage just means touching. And then keywords. So one of the things you're gonna do when you do your unit design here is you're gonna buy keywords for your units. So for instance, when we see the unit profile summary, these are all the units available in the game, and they're fairly generic, right? They'll all have a common sort of like stat line. So we look at the sort of like key stats here. They have their unit type, so they could be light infantry, ranged infantry, heavy infantry, monstrous infantry, light cav, heavy cav, chariots, war wagons, monsters, beasts, or artillery. They all have a speed, which is how many movement points they get. And that's important to denote because a movement point can be used for various things like wheeling, shuffling, moving sideways. So movement's fairly dynamic in this. It's not just a movement stat. Range, if they can shoot, so like artillery can go 48, 24 for ranged infantry. Light cavalry is up to 8 inches. Strikes, how many attack dice they get. It's 10 universally across the board. Same with courage, 10 universally across the board. That's usually how much doom they can take before they're broken and run away. And then their footprint, either wide or narrow. And you can see here the definition of wide is If you're playing with rectangles, and most tabletop rank and flank war games is rectangles fighting rectangles, you usually have a wide front, which is where you're looking from, and then how many ranks you are deep. If you're a narrow unit though, you flip it to the side. The narrow is the front, so that's things like chariots, sometimes cavalry. But in this case, usually it's chariots, war wagons, monsters, beasts, and artillery beasts are actually still wide. Your keyword cost, so the better you are, the more it costs in keywords. So if it's 1, it's a multiplier. You pay the normal cost for a keyword. If it's 2 though, you multiply the cost of that keyword to add it to the unit by 2. So the better a unit is, if it's a monster, artillery, heavy cav, light cav, or monstrous infantry, then they will cost twice as much to give a keyword to them because they're just more effective. And then they have bonus keywords they already start with. So for instance, monstrous infantry start with wild, heavy cav start with devastating charge, light cav start with nimble and skirmishers on top of range 8. And the better you are, like monster, towering, and wild, the more you gain benefits from those keywords, and the more you have to pay for them. You get a min-max for your size of footprint. So again, it's nice and flexible. Whatever miniatures you have, whether they're 3D prints from, Bestiarum or one-page rules, or they're your Warhammer miniatures that have been sitting in a closet for a few years, you can probably finish at a base size. So for wide units, the minimum's 100, the maximum's 200 for the width, and then depth is minimum 40, maximum 160. For the narrows, it would be minimum 40, so like an old Goblin chariot, or a, old Goblin artillery piece. Maximum of 100, and then 40 by 60 for mins. And then hordes are minimum of 150s. These are really big units, and you can buy that keyword. It doubles everything. 150 to 200, and then min max is 150 to 200. So you're never gonna have anything bigger than 200 by 200. That's the maximum size, and that's a good chunky size unit. Like I said, all the unit types are all defined here. So like what kind of infantry you have. So like for instance, heavy infantry are tough. When receiving Doom tokens from a close combat, the unit can ignore the first Doom token they receive. You get a Doom token for every hit you take. And what's nice about this is Doom tokens kind of replace model removal. Your nice units will look nice until they're removed from the table. Basically, you accumulate damage to your units. Once they flee, they're just taken off completely. Tough units just ignore the first one every time they take a hit from somebody. Wild, for instance, they are a weakness. During the movement phase, this unit may not take any actions that would result in negating the distracted keyword, unless it also has a character type keyword, or there's a friendly unit with a character type keyword within 4. So basically, you need to be controlled by somebody because you're wild. And then light cavalry. Light cavalry can be nimble. It's a strength. This unit can reform up to for 2 movement points instead of 5. So normally to change facing costs you 5 of your movement points. This one's only 2. Heavy cavalry have devastating charge. If this unit advanced 6 inches or more this round, it may decrease its target number for close combat attacks by 1 to a minimum of 2 until the end of the game round. And that sounds like it's not that good until you realize that everyone has different ways of fighting everyone else. So Mike's done something interesting here where he's created a target number chart. So instead of having like stats, what you have is you have your class of unit, and then when you're fighting other types of units, you're better and worse at fighting them. So light infantry hit other light infantry evenly on a 4+. They hit on ranged infantry on a 3, but heavy infantry only on a 5. Monstrous infantry on a 5, light cavalry on a 3, but heavy cavalry on a 5. Chariots and war wagons on a 5. Monsters they only hit on 6s, but beasts they hit on a 2+, and artillery on a 4+. Compare that to a monster who hits light infantry on 2s because he stomps them, ranged on 3s, heavy on 2s, monstrous infantry on 2s, hits everything on 2s across the board. So that's why it has the disadvantage of wild, right? You basically become, your stats are kind of baked into how you fight and relate to other things. And this is an interesting way of doing it. Instead of giving them fixed stats, they have relational stats compared to like what other kinds of units they are. So that's your attack dice, like normally 10, right? And then how effective they are is what you're fighting against. You also gain Mercury tokens in this game, and the Force of Will rule relates to that. Mercury is the magical currency. It's kind of like Power Dice from an old Warhammer Fantasy Battle. You can spend a Mercury token to cast spells if you have any wizards in your army, but you can also use them just to reroll dice with Force of Will. Every one equals a reroll of a dice if you want to spend it. Every magic phase, you're going to gain 1 token for every 1,000 points of army you're playing with, plus 1 for every wizard keyword that you have in your army. And then finally, place Doom tokens. Every hit that's successful, there's no saves or anything, you just roll a hit, creates a Doom token. And resolving a shooting attack, if the target unit has fewer than 5 Doom tokens, place 1 Doom token on the target. but stop the target after you've gotten to 5. If the target has 5 or more Doom tokens, the target ignores all hits and receives no Doom. The target unit ignores any shooting hits that would result in receiving a 6 or subsequent unless you're a skirmisher. This can result in hits from shooting attacks placing no Doom tokens. So most you should avoid shooting units that already have 5 Doom tokens. So shooting can soften things up, but not drive them away. And then Doom tokens, units begin with no Doom tokens, and units may have any number of Doom tokens. And then a unit which has a number of Doom tokens equal or greater than its courage becomes broken. A unit that's broken causes panic and is removed from play during the Doom phase, either fled or slaughtered. If a unit doesn't have the broken weakness, it is said to be unbroken. So as soon as you become broken, everybody else within 8 of you gains another Doom token, and then at the end of the Doom phase, if you haven't managed to pull the Doom off them somehow, then they run away. Mike's done a great job of putting in little like beige box interstitials here too, with more information about the universe and little like stories and stuff as well. And then line of sight is drawn from the center of the acting unit. Line of sight can be drawn at any point in the target unit. Units block line of sight, and blocking terrain also blocks line of sight. Unit always counts having line of sight to itself. And then you target things that are within range of your viewpoint. And then finally, fighting in battles. You have the initiative phase. At the start of the initiative phase, both players draw 1 fortune card. Now, fortune cards are an additional deck of cards in here. There's a table and chart if you want to use that instead. Or like you can use a deck of cards and just have the numbers relate to the cards that you're going to be drawing. Everyone shares a deck. You normally start with a certain number of cards, and you draw one every turn. And then press the initiative. The player with the first player token must roll a d6. If the result is higher than the current battle round number, they can choose to keep the first player token or pass it to their opponent. Otherwise, they must pass it. So basically, you can try and keep going first every round, but as soon as you can't roll higher than the current turn number, it gets harder and harder. Magic phase, get your Mercury tokens, 1 per 1,000 points, and play them for every magic that you have, and then you get to cast spells. Spells are basically 2, 4, and 6 cost. When you get a guy with a wizard keyword, you get to pick one of the various schools of magic, and there's 3 spells that they'll be able to cast, which we'll talk about later on. Shooting phase, you shoot. It's everyone with the first player side shoots, and it's a combined game turn. So first player, they all shoot, then the other player shoots. Movement phase, they move, then the other player moves. Combat phase, first player resolves their close combat attacks first, and then any order they choose. The second player does the same. And then the Doom phase. In the Doom phase, players carry out the following steps. First, you panic. Every broken unit causes panic to guys within 8. This can cause further units to become broken. Take all the broken units off. Death's Harvest. Each player may gain either 2 Mercury tokens or 1 fortune card for every unit that's been broken. And then who's next? Any unit that was engaged at the start of the Doom phase and is now unengaged receives a free reform because you can turn around. And then finally, ready units, remove the distracted keyword from all units if you gain 1. In the Doom phase, be sure to check the command keywords, your general and battle standard, and note any units that are currently outmaneuvered, as these rules could affect who becomes broken. And then game end after 5 battle rounds. And there's 10 different scenarios to play as well as soon as some bonus ones. So magic phase, like I said, casting spells. Cantrips, makings, and cataclysms are 2, 4, and 6 tokens each for Mercury. I already talked about the shooting and stuff. So shooting is going to give you distracted tokens. Distracted is what the state that is basically going to be applied. It's why you can't kill things with shooting. But some actions that you get distracted, basically. Note the distracted rule prevents you from sidling into combat backwards and taking other similarly uncinematic actions. So basically, when you become distracted, it makes it harder for you to maneuver. If you want to advance, you can move straight ahead for a movement point. If you want to wheel, you can move 1 inch from one corner or the other for a movement point. The unit may wheel backwards. If it does, then they gain distracted. Shuffle, go sideways for a movement point. Retreat, you can spend 1 or more movement points to retreat. This unit gains the distracted keyword and moves a ½ inch directly backwards. And then reform, the unit gains 5 movement points to reform. The unit gains distracted and then rotates around its center. And distracted can have various other debilitating effects. And then finally, engagement. If you are touching, you're engaged. So corner to corner also counts. And when you're corner to corner, you're also flanking and rearing people. You must assign at least 3 dice when you're fighting to every unit you're engaged with, divided as equally as possible. And you can divide up attack dice in any direction as long as there's at least 3 like evenly distributed amongst the people that you're fighting. A unit may not assign more than 5 attack dice to an enemy that's touching one of its sides or rear corners, and a unit may not assign more than 3 attack dice to someone touching the rear edge. And then finally, combat. Assign attack dice, roll attack dice, and place Doom. Super simple. The Doom phase, like I said, breaking through. And then we get special rules for terrain. So lovely, I think the idea is that Rotvarlden feels kind of cataclysmic and weird. And so you can have a variety of different things that can be perilous, rough, obscuring. And they can be arcane, grim. So like, for instance, grim terrain. When you get within 8 inches of a piece of grim terrain, gains Doom tokens from Panic. They get a bonus Doom token. Each unit can only suffer the effects of Grim once per Doom phase. So basically, when someone runs away or is broken and freaks out, you get a Doom token plus a bonus one for the Doom around you, because this place is friggin' scary. Then Perilous Terrain. For each movement point spent moving through Perilous Terrain, you take a single dice attack as if they're being attacked by a war wagon. Rules for cover, and then we got our various fortune cards. And like I said, there's a table here. So as long as you have 24 of some kind of card, you can keep track of it. So like, you could have 1 to 12 be one house of a deck of cards, and then 13 to 24, but you can also buy the cards. 48 cards total, because there's 2 copies of each one. So yeah, just use a standard deck of playing cards and decide what's the two. The spades and clubs could be one, and then hearts and diamonds could be the other. So you have 2 copies of each. And just count the numbers. Building an army, so like I said, you pick from the various unit types and then assign them different strengths and weaknesses if you want. So it can increase and decrease their point values. 2,000 points is, good fantasy rank and flank size game. So they could be, for instance, bloodthirsty or despised. They get plus 12 inches to the range shot, or like plus 6 if they want for 50 points. You also have the general. The general can also take cursed items, which we'll talk about later. But they gain command and hero. If they have hero X strength, so basically they can, if they're general, and they're hero like +1 or +2, they gain that many strikes to their total strikes because he gets to fight in the unit. Command X gains you, for instance, all friendly units increase their courage by X while within 8 of this unit. So it keeps you from breaking and running off the table. Tough +1, it allows you to ignore those, like the first or the second or the third Doom strike when you get hit. Then you also have the battle standard, which gives you command +1 and hero +1 keywords. When you're building your army, you also get a battle standards. You're always getting general for 0 points. They must be purchased, and the battle standard is 0 points as well and assigned to a unit. And then for every wizard that you buy, so for instance, the wizard keyword is 200 points. You can pick one of these different allegiances, the Abyss allegiances. So the spells of the Sound Eater, incantations of the Blind Monarch, the excretions of the Void, blessings of the Mother, lamentations of the Time Eater, boons of the Oracle, workings of the Great Smith, commands of the Sun Eater, or makings of the Weaver can be things that you can do. And then finally, cursed artifacts can be given to your general. And they give you usually 2 strengths and a weakness, because of course they're cursed. So the Cursed Mantle, for instance, gives you a Cunning Ruse. Once per game immediately after the deployment phase, but before the start of the first battle round. You can pick up and deploy any 3 friendly units. And then Prepared Mind, whilst units in play, you may draw 1 additional fortune card at the start of every round. But you're overconfident in your schemes during game setup, and while the units are in play, you can never have the first player token. So basically your opponent stays the first player forever because you're always overconfident. And we get the general rules for setting up a battle. So rolling for what kind of Chaos of War is going to be there. And then you got 10 different random scenarios. The Pendulum Swing, the Wages of Sin, the Tides of War, a Bloodbath, Altars of Grief, and Burn Them Out. Now this game can be played on a board as small as 3x3, because the only general principle is that you have to start 8 inches away from each other. So it is designed to be as small as a kitchen table game, all the way up to a 6x4 kind of mass combat game. The general principle is just you deploy outside the center line. Now there are some special scenarios later on, and of course the Chaos of War can add to things too, like you can have mushroom groves on the table, you can be in a city, fighting in tunnels. Pets could be there. During deployment, monsters and beasts must be deployed after the unit containing your general, and at least partially within 12 inches of that unit. Haunting voices during the game. When it receives Doom from Panic, they receive an additional Doom. And other ways to play, narrative scenarios like the Chasm, the Fortress, so like a fortress, a breach. Team plays, so playing, and then solo play as well, how to create an army list to play against you with their behavior trees and stuff. Finally, we get our cool piece of, narrative stuff, our little novella, talking about Rotvarlden, and again, illustrated by Crom. And some designer's notes. There's a lovely section here just basically talking about the inside of the game and how he came up with like the stats, the hidden stats for how things hit each other, the target number chart and why it works the way that it does. And that's it. So Hobgoblin design, then we get to our keywords and stuff printed in here as well. So this is a nice index, how to make things, a quick reference sheet, and we're done. So yeah. This is a labor of love from Mike. He's been working on this for several years, and it's beautiful to see it come to fruition. Now, if you're looking for a rank and flank war game that you can use with any miniature collection, or just a miniature collection that you've been eyeballing for a while and you want to play with, this is a good one. The fact that he's included solo play rules and the ability to design your own army lists means that this is the complete game in one book. And as Mike is like the champion of like sort of like streamlined miniature wargame design, I think that this really shows his prowess at creating something that can stand on its own in a single volume and give you a lot of replay value by just having the complexity of missions, design and army design. And then my favorite part of it's compatible with whatever miniatures you like. So he has his own setting and theme, obviously, to play with, but you can use this for your Warhammer Fantasy Battle miniatures, your Kings of War miniatures, your Bestiary miniatures, whatever it is that you're excited about, you can put it on the table and play some games with it. So yeah, go check it out. And of course, beautifully illustrated and put together by Crom and then Greg at Electi doing all the layout and design for the book itself. So check it out at Electi Studios website. I'll link it in the video description below. And of course, you can check out more GMG reviews today. Thanks for watching. Talks on Ash.